All right, time to get this show going. Thanks for joining yet another EOS Community Fireside Chat. I'll be your host, Stéphane Bisson. And today on the agenda, we've got a few topics. We've got some Pomelo action to discuss, of course. Quick reminder for those who still have not submitted their grants, you still have a few days to do that. Grant submission closes on Monday, 11th of April. We're also going to have some Pomelo pitches going on today from Luka, from Luka, as well as an Eden pitch from Chuck MacDonald. We might talk more about Eden as the election is coming up on Saturday. And also wanted to remind you guys that we're doing the Pop Token monthly raffle today at the end of the show. So if you've not yet blended your 5 Pop tokens into your March raffle ticket, you can still do so until the end of the show. Let me go here in the stream chat and I'll copy the link for you guys. The Pop Token bot is also active, so if you want to write your EOS account name in the stream chat with a money sign in front, you can sign up to get your Pop tokens for today. But as always, you won't be able to use today's Pop tokens for the March raffle ticket. So those are only available, the tokens will be sent after the draw. So get in there on our blend page and get your raffle ticket in. All right. We've got almost 30 people in the house. Thanks for joining, everyone. I see we've got our Luka and Chuck, both already in here, ready to go for their pitches. We'll wait still a few more minutes before we get into that. Maybe at this time, I'd invite Daniel Keys maybe to share a quick update on how things are going with Pomelo, if Daniel Keys is around.
Hey, yeah, Pomelo's going great. As of now, we've got 124 grants approved. So already much more than we had in season 1. I think we had something like 75 grants approved in season 1, give or take a couple. Let me run the latest numbers on donations. I haven't checked them in a little while, so bear with me here while I send the bot out to collect data.
Yeah, and for those of you who have submitted a grant, we're trying to help you guys get as much exposure as possible in the EOS community. So you can do your pitches here on the Fireside chat. You can also sign up for maybe a 10-cent meeting for the Asian communities, as well as the Generios pitch deck sessions. So I'm going to share that link again for the pitch sessions for those who want to sign up. Unfortunately, we're only doing 2 pitches per day on the Firesides. We don't want to overwhelm the Fireside with just pitches. So not everyone that signs up is going to be able to pitch on these Fireside chats. However, donations for Pomelo grants, while the grants are closing on April 11th, donations are going to be closing on April 23rd. So in 2 weeks from now, on the Fireside from 2 weeks, we might alter the format a bit, and instead of just having two grants pitching for us, maybe we'll have more than that, but reduce the amount of time for each pitch, or kind of a rapid fire session. So if you're interested in that, sign up on that form. And as well, if you've had your grant approved, we'd like to give you a retweet from our Pomelo account. So there's a few little criterias that we're asking approved grants to follow in order to get this retweet. So share a short description of your grant, share a link to your grant, tag the Pomelo Grants account, and also hashtag Pomelo Grants. So what this is going to do is that people who are looking for grants, for Pomelo Grants on Twitter, they can look up that hashtag Pomelo Grants and see a wide variety of approved grants up there. So that's kind of the idea behind that. So if we haven't retweeted you yet, and you've got an approved grant, craft that tweet, and we'll see it and we'll retweet it for you. Daniel, how's that bot quest going?
The bot has returned with some stats. We've got 695 unique donors so far this round. Raised a total of 12,124 EOS. So we're doing pretty good. We still got a few weeks left with donations open. Grants are still open, so I expect we're going to still get a lot of donations come. We saw a lot come in towards the end of the season in season 1. I think there's people still waiting to see, how the donations pan out, kind of being strategic with their donations. I think still a lot of action to come.
Great, thanks for that update. All right, so let's get into our pitches for the day. Luka, are you around?
Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
Welcome
perfect.
to the Fireside.
Thank you for organizing. So I'm Luka from the team Zero Pass. We're coming from Slovenia, 3 guys working full time on this, and I'm basically presenting the grant port. So maybe Stephanie will show you the link or something like that here. Okay, so what we are trying to achieve with that is basically onboard the massive public infrastructure provided for the passport, and basically this infrastructure is the certificates for issuing passports are all public, and we can basically try and onboard them and make EOS accounts attested by your passport. So the idea behind this is that we make it as easy as possible for you to just tap the passport on the app, and everything happens to achieve basically this end goal, to make this your account attested, still protected, and so on. So we started with server version. This is our second season. Our first season we were still developing it. Right now it's basically deployed. You can try it on Pomelo under Trust Score tab. It's still beta, so we still have some issues to fix. For instance, Chinese passports are still not well received for now, but most other countries work. And up to now, we basically received 25 attestations from basically all different countries. So I don't have a list here, but yeah. And that's basically it. We basically tried in the first season we tried to promise a little bit too much, but then it kind of showed that we should focus on making support for more countries rather than trying to push it on the chain as soon as possible, because right now it's still server supported, and Pomelo basically onboards this on the stations from server to the chain. Other than that, this thing is supposed to basically work for voting, elections, basically for quadratic funding, of course, UBI drops, and it can be like building block for different kinds of verifications. You can verify the picture, the name, and all this stuff later. Right, so the goals for the second season are a little bit smaller. We are basically trying to onboard Germany. For now, we know that we cannot support the new German passport because every country does its own standards, and we just need to support new ones. And also basically just keep improving, so it will work with more countries. I think that's it.
All right, great. Thanks for that concise pitch. We appreciate it. Yeah, so I shared that link in the chat for those who want to go check it out. We had a question here coming in from Hernan. Hernan, I muted you. Your mic was acting up. I tried. So Hernan says that he tried to register his password, but it was waiting for some kind of biometric password that he doesn't have.
Well, first, so if you don't have, how to check if you have a biometric passport, it should have like this icon on the bottom. Basically, it's like a chip icon. So if you have this, you should be having biometric passport. There is chance that your country didn't support them, but most countries support them for like 15 years now. So I'm not quite sure. Basically, that shouldn't be a problem for Israel, for instance, if I remember correctly. If that answers your question. Basically, you should probably just ping me in private message, and we will go through the logs and see what's happening. Maybe our support is not good enough yet for Israel.
All right, and Veronica asks about Venezuela. Are those supported in port? Are those passports supported in port?
Well, best to just try, right? So please try and private message me if they don't. And if we will have to fix it or something like that, we sometimes offer rewards if the bug is big enough, basically. So at the end of the day, basically we need testers. We don't have the passport from all the world, and it's not that easy to just kind of just ping people and tell them, please try your passport. They kind of get protective. So I'm also inviting you to just try and help us build this stuff up.
All right. Great. So, and then if everyone has any issues, they can reach out to you. You're here on Discord. I know you're on Telegram and Twitter as well. So let's try it out. And
there's a bit of an incentive if you're participating in Pomelo and making donations, and you successfully link your port. You'll get a 25% trust bonus, which basically means any donation you make before we do the calculation, we'll give it a 25% boost in that value of the donation in how we calculate what your matching allocation is. So it'll be more matching funds for the projects you donate to.
Basically, a bigger
boost your trust bonus.
A bigger power, basically, on your vote, a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that, if you've already done donations, but then you add that trust score to your account, then it's going to be applied to those previous donations. I think social media sites add 5% each, if I'm correct, and then port gives the biggest boost, of course, with 25%. So it's definitely something you want to consider.
Yeah, please do it.
You get a total of 50% trust bonus if you do all of the social platforms. We each get 5% for each of them, and 25% for port.
So if you max out, for example, and you give a $100 donation, then the system would count that as a $150 donation when it comes time to calculate the matching amounts that are given out to these grants.
That's right.
Okay, great work. I haven't tried it yet. I'm still waiting for the grant submissions to close in just a few days, and then I'm gonna do my deep dive into all these grants and max out my trust bonus and all these good things. All right, any more questions for Luka from the audience? Has anyone tried it out? Has it worked for them? Any thoughts?
I did mine when it came out, and it worked like a charm.
I had issues last night. I was trying to set it up. I'll try it again, but it was like I don't know, some error, like the URL couldn't be found in the app or something. But I'll try it again. I'm happy to hear that. I will if I can't get it to work. I'm not planning to do my own contributions until after the proposals close on the 11th. So I'll try it again from a different phone even, but I'll ping you if it doesn't work. I'm happy to hear that others have been able to get it to work, which leads me to believe it's on my end, which is good. I want that trust bonus. Is there any stats yet on the Pomelo side of how many people have completed it?
Oh, great question.
Verification with port.
Yeah, with port.
Yeah, basically I have like 24 right now.
Nice. It's not too bad.
It's when we started, there were a couple of countries that didn't work that then started working. So I'm expecting to pick up later.
Yeah,
And
we
like
haven't been
this-
promoting it a lot yet. We'll probably be doing a campaign, an email campaign, letting people know that opportunity. Hey,
Well,
the trust bonus will apply to your previous donations. We'll make sure that's all communicated. Right now, the only way, you'd have to either stumble upon it in your profile page, or and we're displaying it on checkout that a trust bonus exists, but it's pretty. You have to kind of know that it exists to understand.
Yeah, I went through most of the trust bonus items. I've got 45% extra trust bonus. I also got my Diamond Pomelo badge, which is pretty cool. And I invite everybody else, if you're going to be making donations, increasing your trust bonus is really amplifying the donations that you make. It's really worthwhile. And the idea is you're never going to get rid of all malicious actors, but you essentially drown them out by having good actors participate in the trust bonus extra features.
Yeah, that's right. The best defense against civil attack is legitimate people participating and boosting the trust bonus.
Has anyone signed up for Weibo just to max out their trust bonuses yet?
I think if I'm not, I think you might need a Chinese phone number to be able to get a Weibo account. That was a tough one for us to test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last night I was trying to do all the trust bonuses. I got stuck on the port, but like for Apple, I switched away from Apple like a year ago. So I had to like go find a device to fill out the 2FA. Battery is dead. Had to charge it for 10 minutes. But I'm looking forward to maximizing mine. So I was just curious if anyone else is obsessed like me.
That is the only one that I did not do, and I believe I do have a Weibo account. Has anybody done the trust bonus sections, but not on desktop using mobile? And how's that experience? Cricket? I guess not.
It should work on. We tested it in mobile. It should work in mobile. Speaking of mobile, actually, one thing and piece of tidbit I can share. We've been tracking the usage data, and we're noticing more and more mobile users in season 2 than in season 1. So we're seeing an increase in mobile adoption over desktop. I think we're something like 80% mobile.
All right. Well, thanks, Luka, for pitching your grant and for all the good work you're doing on Port. Can't wait to try it out in a few days. And everyone, if you think of questions, there's going to be the open mic session afterwards, so we can always revisit these grants if people have more questions later on. All right. At this point, I'm going to call on Chuck to join us on stage here and talk about his Pomelo proposal.
Hello.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi. So yeah, this is a proposal that's got Eden at its heart, basically. And I just wrote something. I'm just going to read it down. Yeah, you probably won't need the timer, but I'll go now. Thanks to the work of thousands of individual stakeholders, the EOS network is about to realize massive success in every way. This success will rightly be attributed largely to the coordinating work of the ENF, but as always, there are unsung, unrecognized heroes operating behind the scenes. One of these heroes in the EOS ecosystem is Eden on EOS. Since its inception a year ago, Eden has become a prototype of decentralized organization, and with its second general election just hours away, it has the opportunity to step forward autonomously to forge its own path as a key component in the EOS ecosystem. There is an immediate need for Eden to take control of its open source code base, which was developed by Dan Larimer's team, now called Fractally. Thanks to EOS support, led by Eden's Randall Rowland, this is now underway, and he has committed to the maintenance of the code and the creation of documentation for it so that Eden can run its own elections and update the software to reflect changes in the organization's bylaws. The Eden community owes a debt of gratitude to the first batch of delegates, and especially the chief delegates, who, to a man, have worked diligently and professionally on behalf of the EOS network. Eden's future potential is limited only by our imaginations. With this in mind, we, Chuck MacDonald and Dominic Thomas, have been developing ideas that can help the organization step forward boldly into a leadership role for the EOS network, and indeed decentralized communities of all kinds. 1. EdenElection.com. Our pitch for EdenElection.com on Pomelo began several months ago when we were discussing the need for Eden to use its excellent election and treasury software more often. We need to run more election events. More people need to experience what we felt using the software during the first election 6 months ago. More developers need to dig into the code to see how some of the visionaries behind EOS designed decentralized applications. Our original pitch was so broad that it included the work now being done by EOS support, and our scope has narrowed to a single, relatively simple concept: a standalone DApp that will allow anyone with an EOS account to create an election event that mimics Eden's. This DApp will be unique and will allow Eden to showcase its methodology to a much wider audience. With it, anyone will be able to create an Eden event for any reason. This could be large group discussions, which we've named fractal forums. It could be standalone Eden community elections for committees or other purposes. It could be contests where, for example, a bunch of people get together and rate a tweet or rate a picture or art or something like that. It could be a consensus tool for other organizations, even from other blockchains. We are seeking support from the community through Pomelo because we hope to create something which the entire EOS network will be able to look to as an example of a high-quality, decentralized application which performs a function that only EOS is capable of. We will manage its design and development, provide infrastructure for the DApp itself, and host it at EdenElection.com. This will require consultation with not only the Fractally team, but developers in the Eden community, EOS support, and DAOs from the EOS community and beyond. It will require marketing to the broader crypto community, and also a focused concentration on key social influencers who are passionate about freedom and personal autonomy. Our estimated needs are in the $50,000 range to build a minimum viable product for this DApp, and if we cannot achieve this level of support, our efforts will be put into designing and publishing the concept on EdenElection.com in consultation with developers in the Eden community. Both of us, Dominic and I, will be running as candidates in the next Eden election, seeking a budget to make this happen. This is a project that will remain relevant to Eden going forward, and we intend to see it through. Whether that happens now or later is simply a function of the support we receive from the community. A second idea for Eden is an Eden NFT house. Eden creates NFTs for its members automatically when a new member officially joins, but this is just the start of what the organization can do with the technology. Members can be rewarded with intrinsically valuable NFTs for almost anything they do in Eden. This means rewarding everyone who takes part in an election event with an EOS-backed memento that shows that they participated and whether they were elected to a position. These mementos could be used to prove a member's level of involvement in Eden, and they could even become DeFi instruments, providing a bonus multiplier to a delegate's budget, for example. With an NFT creation DApp available to Eden members, projects from within the community could reward workers with unique tokens of thanks. As most of us are aware, we're just beginning to understand the potential of NFTs when we consider them as something more than art collectibles. And number 3, an Eden delegates pool. One of the most significant challenges we've encountered in Eden is the pooling of funding to accomplish group goals. We are advocating for a change in Eden's bylaws to create 2 decentralized pools of funds, one for delegates and one for chief delegates, which would come from the Eden Treasury itself after each election to be used via MSIG for Eden-specific operations and projects. This would allow delegates to fund projects without the tax and legal implications that result from accepting funds into their personal EOS accounts. Eden members should take pride in the organization as a working prototype of a well-designed, decentralized democracy. Because it is owned by the EOS network itself, it exists beyond national boundaries and is accountable to every EOS stakeholder. It is a premium example of what open source best practices can accomplish, and it is only getting started. If you aren't already a member, consider joining today to be at the leading edge of decentralized autonomous community. Thank you.
You managed to sell somebody. I saw a donation come through for you for the Eden election grant as you were speaking.
Awesome.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, thanks, Chuck, for this well-prepared presentation. Although, nice bluff there, telling me I didn't need my timer when you then exceeded your allocated time. But no, it's fine. It was good. Good presentation. So, if I understand correctly, this $53,000 that you're aiming for, you're hoping to reach that amount with Pomelo and Eden combined. Is that right?
Well, ideally Pomelo, yeah, but like there's no guarantees anybody's going to get elected to anything, right? So it would be really nice to achieve that with Pomelo.
Right, but if you get, let's say, 25,000 here and 30,000 in Eden, then those funds would like be pooled together to deliver on what you just explained.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Nice timing for both Pomelo and Eden to be running simultaneously. I love to see that that interaction and one platform leveraging the other. It's really good. Anyone have any comments or questions they'd like to share with us and with Chuck? How about let's see some. Write the number 1 if you plan on participating in the Eden election this Saturday in the stream chat. I'm wondering how many people here are going to be present in the election. Oh, we got Dwayne, we got Felix, Joshua getting in there, Hernan, Sebastian, Jay, Chris. Yeah, it's good to see. Good to see. I imagine a lot of us here who are, dedicated EOS community members showing up every week to these fireside chats. I'm expecting to see a lot of us, also showing up for the Eden election on Saturday. I think we have I think it was like 114 people signed up when I checked last. Okay, someone started playing Hydra. I wanted to remind everyone that you do need to register 24 hours in advance. So don't wait till the last minute to join the election, because then you won't be able to. So you need to register this week, tomorrow, at the latest Friday morning early, for you to be able to participate in the election on Saturday morning. Got lots of ones in this chat. We got Francis, Dogman, Anessa, Mark Stair, Chuck, of course, Drew. Yevon missed the question, but you can write a 1, Yevon, because I know you'll be participating in the Eden election. I just inducted Yevon earlier today, actually, into Eden because he was so motivated to participate in the election. So that's great. Oh, Drew Block. Drew Block bluffing us with a typoed 1. Yeah, so back to the pitch here. I'd love to hear some comments from people. I personally am glad that someone's taking up the mantle of, continuing to promote and develop Eden. I'd love to hear what other people think.
I don't really have any questions for Chuck, but I've been following your work that you've been doing with Dominic with this, and I just want to say thank you because I think it's really awesome and helpful, and I love your enthusiasm and all the work that you're doing to help and like doing this clear planning out, and also your art too. I think I told you before, but it's like super amazing. So yeah, thank you so much, Chuck, for all the great work with Eden and EOS and just in general. I'm really excited to see this project succeed and grow and really help Eden and fractal governance in the future. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
I'm curious if. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it, Chris. Go for it.
Just that people have had a chance to consider the proposed bylaws that are going to be ratified, or that can be ratified by the next set of chief delegates. I see a lot of ones, so maybe another set, maybe do like 5 and 6 or something. I don't know, another set of numbers if you'll ratify the bylaws, if you're even aware of this fact that that's one of the responsibilities.
What is this chat?
This is the stream chat, just a few tabs above the voice chat.
Thanks.
I'm personally not aware of all the new bylaws that are to be ratified by the new chiefs. Chris, is that something you can go over quickly with us?
Yes. Give me 1 sec. I just had them up. 1 second. I'll read through them. They're pretty short. I'll put them in the chat. Oh, I got echo. Okay, I'll throw them in the chat and I'll read them right now. So basically, the bylaws are as such. So the mission statement to create value for the EOS ecosystem. Number 1, the size of an independent Eden community shall not exceed 10,000 members. Also, I guess I should give some background. These bylaws, this might be some confusion, but we've sort of done away with the idea that there's a peace treaty and then a separate set of bylaws. And just to simplify it, there's just a single document that are these bylaws, which are a compilation of the previous peace treaty plus some of Dan's suggested bylaws. So it's just one document. And I'm putting it in the chat now. There you go. So, okay, number 2, representatives, henceforth known as delegates, shall be elected via the following process. A, members are randomly organized into roughly equal sized groups of 12 or fewer, where total number of groups equals the population divided by the average group size. Actually, do you really want me to read all these? It's quite a bit. I put it in the chat.
I'm not sure anymore. Now, I just pulled up the document. It's a bit longer than I was expecting.
As I read it, it's making it look dry. Maybe just have a look.
What are the big highlights? Let's
highlights are that the big ones are that elections are every 3 months instead of 6 months. So that's a big change. So we've halved the latency for each election. We've also changed the suggested, in order to become a member, instead of 10 EOS, it's 3 EOS. And we've also changed the pay difference between the head chief delegate and the other chief delegates. And I think we landed on it being the same. I forget, where did we land on that? It went back and forth. It was going to be twice as much or 1.5 times. I think, it's equal now. Yeah, number 6. So head chief delegate funding allotment will be equal to what a regular chief delegate will receive. So, I mean, there was a bunch of other stuff. Honestly, if you followed those calls, which, few did, and Eve, congrats for getting through all 50 hours because we were chatting about this in the members chat. But, there's a lot of things that we did consider wanting to add. But the fact that elections are 3 months apart, there's an opportunity for the next set of chief delegates to just keep running with this and hopefully take a few meetings. And it's a bit of work, but just keep tweaking and adding detail and making this more holistic.
All right, so let's take a vote. We'll go with 9 if you agree with these changes and 0 if you disagree with these changes. So the changes are elections every 3 months, 3 EOS to join instead of 10, and equal funding for the chief delegate compared to the head chief delegates. Let's just keep it to those three big lines. Oh, you see, we're getting a flood of nines. A flood of nines. Unanimous support for these changes so far in the from this group, anyways. 2 nines from Patrick, going above and beyond. Yeah, I mean, I agree with these changes. I think it makes sense. Also, going to 3 months for Eden elections might time up nicely with Pomelo donation rounds, which the target is to have them, every quarter, so 4 a year, so every 3 months as well. So maybe, that's something that EOS community could come together and have these Eden elections at the same time as Pomelo to really, give a big boost of funding to the builders in the ecosystems and the most organized and community supported builders can get support from both Pomelo and Eden. Also, I personally plan on running in Eden if there's no one else proposing great ideas in my group. I'd run in order to donate to a set of grants that I'll be choosing, probably just like a top 5 grants type of deal. So using that Eden funding to get more vote weight for Pomelo grants. But yeah, it's great to see the participation in the chat here. Mostly everyone supports.
Super good news, and I definitely like what Chuck said. We did work way too hard as chief delegates to get these proposed bylaws across the line. So if there was some zeros in here, it would be a little depressing. So thanks for that.
So I can't, if anyone has thoughts on Eden themselves, the upcoming election, the proposal from Chuck, any comments they want to share. We're up to 50 people in the chat. That's great. Just feel free to jump in here with any topic related to Eden.
If I can add one more thing that's not on the clock, if you scroll up and look at the picture that I put up there of the mock-up of a head chief NFT, you can see that. This is one thing that Dominic and I have been talking about is integrating NFTs into every round of Eden. So there's the technology. I'm talking to a developer, a Blender developer, who we can create these things dynamically. Like, imagine being able to churn out one of those NFTs like immediately after everybody's elected to a round. I mean, we can do it manually. It might take a couple of weeks to do it manually, but I think everybody who participates in an election should get a backed NFT. You can see that there's a little digit 1 in there. It could just mean like this NFT is backed by 1 EOS. And if those things were created dynamically, it would be beautiful, and it would take resources to code that, obviously. But they can be made through brute force and ignorance easily. And I think that NFTs as a sign of appreciation for everybody who participates in an election is really key. And as I said in the pitch, those things could be staked to your Eden account, for example. And like, if you have a few of them, you might be able to gain like a 1%, 2%, 3% multiplier to any budget that you might win as an Eden delegate. That kind of idea. So it would just create some value for those things and just show appreciation. And then they could get tossed around the ecosystem and just make some people excited about Eden.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece you guys did there. I would love to see those automatically generated for people who participate in elections. We got a comment here from Phoenix asking if Eden would consider to offer dispute resolution service for applications. And then Phoenix goes on to not be impressed by Eden. Did you want to elaborate a bit on that, Phoenix? What you mean, or what you'd like to see?
Boo.
I personally boo. Yeah, we got some boos from the crowd. Go for it, guys.
Just a comment that just there does appear to be other voting type solutions out there, and when we start to survey maybe the needs of potential applications that could be built on EOS, some of those applications could certainly benefit from a dispute resolution service that it would seem Eden might be perfectly suited for. And it would also give Eden the ability to actually gain some income, for providing something that free market actually needs. They could actually charge for that service versus what I see as a model that may not necessarily be sustainable because there's no actual flow of money coming in to use the service that's needed. So that was my only suggestion or thought there.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
There are proposals in the blue paper for some sort of group that does this sort of thing, and the Eden process could be used for those systems. I think that the current Eden process, though, like, people aren't being elected to be arbitrators in that sense. So it would just muddy up the waters if people are running on a project and then they're expected to also be doing this sort of arbitration.
Real quick follow-up question for Chuck. I was just wondering what you see as the interplay or relationship with the standing Eden admin essentially and this org that you're proposing that would be kind of operating in parallel but also composed of Eden members. If you could speak a little bit more about that.
I'm not really proposing a separate organization, just a separate, just a standalone DApp to isolate the actual mechanism, the election mechanism, so that it would be usable for anybody, anywhere, for any purpose. It's not another body of people. It's just basically a product that Eden could produce to showcase its basically its social technology, right? Dominic and I wrote a response to the Core Plus blue paper, and we were talking about a way to use this tool, to use this DApp to basically to establish people for a committee, right? So there's a need for an EOSIO plus working group, right? And there's all sorts of people in EOSIO who have no interest in joining Eden, right? But the Eden technology could be used by them. So if there was, we were talking about having like a dynamic discussion where you invite people to a very focused discussion, say on EOS governance or EOSIO governance technologies or whatever. You invite them to that discussion. You run an Eden process with them in it, right? And by the end of that process, the most capable people are going to be bubbling up to the final table. So you run that process. You have a discussion period over a couple of weeks. You run a few of these processes, and at the end of it, you've got a bunch of people who are qualified, and everybody knows they're qualified. And then once you've identified these people, you can run an election, an Eden style election with them, and come up with your final committee of say 6 people, right? And then you've got authentic buy-in from the whole community, and you've got a transparent process, all on chain. You could have videos saved. It doesn't matter, but I mean, it does matter. The final table of each of those discussion rounds would be a really good, focused discussion. So that's what we were talking about with the blue paper response. It wasn't to replace Eden with something else. It was to use the Eden methodology to establish a committee.
I see. I
Yeah,
got
that
you.
was. I think I finally got in. Can you guys hear me? It's Dominic.
Yep, can hear you.
Yeah, we were just thinking. There's such a sense of urgency here, and if we could immediately legitimize a core group that could just get things moving, we just felt that was definitely an alternative to think about. And the Eden process does such a good job of legitimizing, the results, that we figured, you could get a governance team together, right, in 4 hours, and they could just start getting to work.
How would that governance team be formed, and it would just be like interested parties that showed up, and would they need to be members of the Eden community already?
No, we weren't thinking of it that way. We were just thinking, anybody, right? Obviously make some, announcements and stuff, and try to publicize it as much as possible through the ENF's channels and everywhere else we can. And yeah, more of like an open call. I mean, are you interested in leading EOS governance? And then I think, you could also get a sense of, people that have a vision already. It can normally be very helpful, because governance, it can be a 900-pound gorilla, right? Or it can be, just the greatest help, that just creates a lot of efficiency. And we've seen that over and over. And of course, governments tend to get this big label as just being bureaucratic wastes of time, because normally they're not efficient and they're corrupt, et cetera. But in this instance, assuming we would get the outcomes we have been getting to date, which is that I think just about anybody can say, at least from Eden perspective, that the elections have produced incredibly high quality, delegates, chief delegates, et cetera. And as a result, we've been able to, kind of keep moving. So, that was the idea behind that. Open call, get people involved, and potentially hold it in multiple languages as well.
Gotcha.
Nobody has anything super pressing. I wouldn't mind commenting on the other product, the actual Pomelo. I was having a hard time getting in when Chuck was doing his presentation.
Yeah, go for it.
The idea behind this, because there's been a little bit of confusion, we're not suggesting that the vision we have for this particular project, that product will be what the Eden community uses going forward, say, for its elections, right? It's about creating a more simplified version, likely stripping out any of the components that require verification, to allow people to kind of come up with their own ways of doing that potentially, or certainly a feature that ideally can be turned on and off type of thing. But the idea of it being standalone so that it does become a legitimate public good, our thinking is that, it is really such a gem of a process that the more people get exposed to it in whatever way, maybe not Eden, because we know those people who don't want, to do the visual thing, et cetera, or don't want to be a part of Eden for different reasons, but to get to use it and at least enjoy the protocol and see the consensus and what that's like in the experience, just thought would be good for kind of helping the community get behind Eden, because we're confident that it'll be a great experience for most people who would use it. And then the other idea was that once we've got a version that, Eden, like I'm assume, have its own GitHub eventually, where whatever version of the software the Eden, community is deciding to use will live. And this would likely live in its own GitHub, potentially, so to not cause confusion. And, it could potentially also be evolved along different lines. So that's the other idea behind it, is that it could eventually be turned into a commercial product for someone, or it can be integrated into somebody's app. Like I'm working for an NFT project right now on Wax, and they really want governance to be a big part of the game that they're building. And I was telling them, if this Eden thing would be great, because they're they're at that point where they're like, well, how do we get some leadership to get things moving and all that? So it's a common issue. But if you had something like this that like we could just integrate into their website even or something, that would just be awesome. Solve a lot of problems. Thanks for the chance to talk about it a bit.
Yeah, and just a quick follow-up on that. So I presume then that any code would be open source, being that would be like kind of the public good component
Absolutely.
of this. So it could get pulled back into adopted by other Edens, if you will.
Sure. Or anybody. Absolutely. Yeah. The idea is to make a public good version of it. It's also hosted, right? Because that's going to be part of the budget, is to maintain, a back end so that thing's live, so that it's not like people have to download it and set up, a cloud server or whatever to host an election. We want this thing to be, right there. Like, right now we could all say, oh, all right, let's figure out who we think the coolest guy is. Let's just go over to the Eden consensus thing and we'll all debate who's the best guy. I don't know. It's a dumb example, but we want it to be like that, where it's just live, it's ready, so that the non-technical user as well and can engage it and use it, not necessarily have to hire a dev or whatever.
Cool, thanks.
Great, thanks for those clarifications.
Yeah, of course.
All right, anything else about Pomelo, about Eden, before we move on to some other topics?
Can I have a quick run through of how do we use? I blended my diamond potion and the golden diamond potion, but I haven't. How do you get the mana, or how do you get the fragments, or what next, basically?
Sure, so if you got your diamond potion, you go to harvest.pomelo.io, and then you can harvest your diamond fragments. And then after that, when you've got your diamond fragments, you go to blend.gems.io, and then you can combine those diamond fragments into a Pomelo diamond. So these Pomelo diamonds, they are cosmetic only. Unfortunately, we couldn't associate a trust score to them, but we are working on incorporating them into user profiles on Pomelo, and that's still a work in progress. There were some other priorities that were more mission critical than that the Pomelo team was focused on, but we did add actually a display of all of the golden Pomelos, the season 1 badge, and the diamond Pomelos that you're holding. They now show up under your profile. So if you click on your profile link in Pomelo, you'll be able to see, those NFTs displayed under your profile. Kind of, if you have a bunch of diamond Pomelos, it kind of looks like medals hanging from your neck, or at least I thought it did when I checked out my profile. So you guys can go check that out, see what it looks like so far, and we're planning on adding more profile pic functionalities within Pomelo and linked to these Pomelo NFTs. So I just wanted to add that in there, and thanks for the segue opportunity, Hernan. And if you have more difficulties with these, the blend and the harvest or whatever, feel free to send me a message, and I'll send those links over to you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Great. Okay. All right. Some other topics for today. If Eve is still around, maybe you can talk about how the ENF recently incorporated in the United States and the process and purpose behind that.
Sure. The ENF is now a registered corporation in Delaware as of 3 weeks ago, on March 17th. The purpose of doing that was because we recently hired, and we talked about this on multiple firesides, we hired engineers, ex-Block 1, well, now ex-Block 1, ex-Bullish engineers that we hired. And they're all located in the United States. And so going through that process to be able to hire them, we incorporated in the United States. And that process has been extremely tedious from an administrative point of view, from a legal point of view, making sure that everything was okay as well. Also learning the differences between Canada and the US when it comes to that. But anyways, everything is done. And so we are now ENF USA Limited in Delaware. There's a link to the EOS Network Foundation, which is a non-for-profit in Canada. So all of that is kosher so that it aligns with the mission. And then to complicate things, because most of the employees within the United States are in different states, turns out that in the United States, obviously the employment laws are different per state, but even what can go in an employment agreement is different per state. How the payroll happens, how the taxes happen, etc. It's extremely complex compared to Canada anyways. Even the banking system, for example, it seems like the US has something like 14,000 different banks. In Canada, we've got the big five. We've got 5 banks. We've got a couple of co-ops, but we don't have 14,000 different banks. And so just doing that, setting up the accounts, obviously having everything on board so that they know that we're a non-for-profit foundation, that we are linked to crypto, that we're able to transact between accounts, no issues, and all doing that at large banks so that we can then go through the regular audits, et cetera, et cetera. So it took about a month and a half to be able to get all of that set up. But everything is ready. Everything is in place. As we mentioned a few weeks back, the engineers are starting. So one was due to start today, but unfortunately, some family issues arose, and this person is only going to start in 2 weeks. There was a death in the family. And the other 2 are starting next Monday. And so the 3 engineers, and I think this is the first time that we'll mention their names, even though it's probably the worst kept secret in town. So we're going to have Aaron Haggerty, who you may know. Aaron Haggerty. We have Bucky, and we have Matt Witherspoon. So those are the 3 that we're currently announcing. We have a few more that are in the works. So we'll keep those as a surprise for another time. But basically doing all of that, it ensures that now the employees, alongside those that were already working for the NF, now can get their respective W-2s, 1099s, all those fancy things that I'm now learning about because they're different forms and different titles in Canada. But making sure that, like I said, that everything is above ground, that everything is good, that this can be this is sustainable as well, that basically the government knows that we're a crypto company. They approve that. The legal team approved that. This happened right when, or the beginning, the legal part anyways, happened right when the Ukrainian war broke out. And so even jumping through hoops to showcase that the EOS that we have, or the crypto that we have, is essentially virgin EOS, and that it doesn't come from Russia. That was a thing at some point. Losing, I guess, using large banks as well, so that they're well above board, so that they understand, so we get their support, the auditors as well. So we basically just replicated our model that we were successfully able to do in Canada. We replicated it down in the States, and it really only took about 3 weeks from end to end to get it done in the US. And so it was quite a lot of work, but we're pretty happy to be here. And once the engineers start, and when other employees that are located in the US start in the future, then the system is in place for them, regardless of which state they're in. So feel free to ask any questions if you want about that as well, because we went, like I said, we went through the whole process. And what we hear often, so my experience anyways in Canada has been very favorable over the last couple of years, the last 4 years or so. The legal team and essentially the government regulations and the government bodies have really embraced crypto in a way where they facilitate the innovation. Whereas what I've heard anyways from the United States is that it really stifled innovation. And as much as it was somewhat difficult to work with the U.S. attorneys, because they asked some very specific questions, like I mentioned, for example, where source of funds, Russia, that type of thing. In general, it was actually pretty easy. And so this notion that perhaps in the past some have used the regulatory landscape to say why they couldn't perhaps do something in the United States, from my point of view, has not been the case at all. It was extremely easy. And again, being everything above board, they know everything that we do.
Eve, I had a question for you. The funding for Eden, that essentially just comes from the network itself, right? Like, does that even come through the ENF, or how does
it does not come through the ENF?
Yeah,
and
okay.
so that's a good question, because we were asked that a lot, and we have to go through this on multiple occasions with people. So if and this relates to how we are incorporated and how we get our non-for-profit status, and why that's relevant and why that enables us to be able to give grants, essentially. So it's all kind of the same subject. So if the ENF is sending, and this applies to any entity, if the ENF is sending funds to an entity, for example, I think it was Chuck that asked the question, right? If I'm sending funds to you, Chuck, I need an invoice on your end. For every entry that I have, I need an out. So for every income that I flow through the ENF, I need a matching exact out, because at the end of the year, I need to be non-for-profit, right? So cash flow doesn't matter. I can have as many ins as I want, as long as the outs match 1 for 1. However, what we can do, and where this becomes relevant for the grant side of things, is that we knew that we'd be in a position where we want to give grants to organizations or smart contracts, essentially smart contracts managed by or accounts managed by smart contracts. So accounts where there's really nobody on the other end, where we can't really get an invoice. Eden is the prime example of that. And that was the first donation that we did. That was the first pilot, essentially, of running through the system, making sure even that the government was aware of this, so that we could really test this through, and it's in the bylaws, et cetera, in terms of how the permission set and everything is really well laid out, so that they understand how this works. Eden is a smart contract. It's an account that is controlled by a smart contract that is dynamic, similar to, let's say, EOSIO.prods. So there's really nobody on the receiving end. Now, on the receiving end, though, there is an account, and that account is controlled by individuals, but no one individual can control that account. And at any given time, those individuals can change. In that instance, instead of funds flowing through the ENF, we become stewards of network funds, we being the ENF in this case. We become stewards of network funds, and the funds flow directly from EOSIO.grants, which the ENF does not control, to whatever account, in this case, the example I'm giving, through the Eden account. I don't recall the name, eden.gm or something like that. That way, the ENF is the facilitator. It is the facilitator. It is the steward, but it does not need to account for those transactions in its own accounting, because it did not flow through the ENF. And that enables the network to be able to give grants, for the network to be able to keep a record of those grants, for those grants to be accounted for, but not accounted for in the non-for-profit accounting side of things of the ENF.
Yeah, hey Eve, it's Dominic here again. I've been asking this question. I follow your chain of custody there, and that makes sense. But what about when it actually hits the Eden account?
I do not particularly care what you do when it hits the Eden account, because now it's outside of my hands. And so the idea is, no, but
what's your
from
opinion
a
on
legal
what Eden
point,
should have? Like, I think Eden
well,
should have a
we've-
structure, is my point.
Well, we've talked about this on multiple occasions, and I've given my opinion that I believe that there would be an advantage, I believe, for the chief delegates, whoever they may be, to have an entity that could accept and distribute funds. The problem is always the who accepts it, because then it generates a taxable event. And then when you distribute it, if you don't have an invoice, then again, you're on the hook for those.
Yep.
For that revenue, right? And so I do see that right now, even though I may have wanted, and is very mentioned us on multiple occasions, I don't see how the chief delegates, for example, would be able to even receive funds to be able to ensure that they could deploy funds for the maintenance and or operations of Eden itself. So another entity would have to pick up that tab. In our case, for example, the ENF would not even be able to send extra funds unless we got an invoice. Yeah. And if we sent funds to that smart contract controlled account, then we wouldn't be able to guarantee that those funds actually went towards, for example, the operation and maintenance of Eden itself, the code itself, for example, or the elections themselves, for example. So I do see that as a hole in the system right now. And so in that spirit, what we did is we gave access to the current chief delegates to our legal team, or some of our legal team anyways, so that they could ask those questions and come up with an opinion and on what the different options would be for the chief delegates to be able to do that, whoever they may be, and for that to even have in, for example, the entity that they create, that the chief delegates are not representatives, or they are not Eden, and that they do change every election, however frequent those elections may be, like all of that. So they did have discussions with the legal team on that. They did get an opinion on that. They did mention, I think, in a few of the chief delegate calls. Ultimately, that file didn't move past that. I still believe that there's a lack there. I still believe that if the chief delegates were to have a pool of funds that they could leverage that weren't the pool of funds from the treasury, which is capped at 5% per month, that could be beneficial to Eden itself. But that is not my call, and that would be up for the next chief delegates to pick up if they so chose to.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and something we can talk about further. But it's good to get your insight. Thank you. I'm from the U.S. and I've run a company here since 2001, so I understand at least what the rules are here, and they're pretty brutal. And I don't think people realize how far the U.S. arm goes. I'm sure that's a big reason why you guys did what you did too, just to avoid it. That was smart.
Kind of as I mentioned though earlier, governments just want to get their share. And the way that I've operated the businesses in the crypto realm that I've been a part of over the last couple of years, we've made sure that we do everything above ground, and we pay taxes, and we pay a lot of taxes. But with that, it has showcased that crypto is not this dark net technology leveraged by those who simply want to essentially avoid paying taxes or doing malicious things. And that has, I believe, slowed down the initial process of doing business, because there's definitely a cost in doing so. However, having done that now 4 years in, and being able to navigate that system and essentially pioneering that system, because we were the first with EOS Nation on multiple fronts for multiple aspects of this. Pomelo now is the first, ENF is the first. Like, we've got a lot of now, I guess, extra tools under our belt that at this point, I would say is a huge advantage. The grants, the subsidies, the doors that open once you play in the system, while still being, how can I say this? While still respecting the spirit and intent of blockchain, we've been able to bridge the worlds, or I've been able to find a way, anyways, so far, knock on wood, to be able to bridge both worlds. And we've been rewarded handsomely for that. And what I mean by rewarded is we've had the luxury of being able to innovate, being supported, and also being able to, because it doesn't exist, right? The system doesn't exist. There's no law. There's nothing right now. And so we've been able to get some leeway in creating what could be. We're literally at the forefront. And so when something that doesn't exist and that we try to push the boundaries happens, let's say we try to do something and they don't know what to do with that because it doesn't exist, and we're the first ones, they've definitely erred on the side of letting us innovate versus stifling innovation. And that has been a relationship that's grown over the last couple of years, where with that trust that's built, they've definitely been way more, I guess the leash has been extended over and over and over, way further as time goes by. And things become so much easier, so much cheaper, way more support. The government of Canada literally gives grants to blockchain applications and space innovators in the space. There are certain things that we're exploring right now where even this is very, very early, so I don't even know if this is going to be possible, but where should, for example, the ENF want to purchase hardware, for example, that we could potentially loan it out to the network and the government of Canada would pay the vast majority of that hardware because it's a foundation and the traditional rules apply whether it's in blockchain or not. So there are just things like that where now that they see that blockchain isn't necessarily an evil technology, and it's simply a technology, and what you choose to do with it is just like with the internet, you can choose to do something with it, and that what we're choosing to do is quite positive, then we're getting a lot of support.
Yeah, what you mean? You guys are not a global money laundering front for drug lords and QAnon?
No, and again, the fact that as well that this concept of virgin EOS, the fact that we have access to virgin clean EOS is actually relevant.
Yeah, I know. It's a Bitcoin goes for a premium too in the same way.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember it took in 2018. It took 6 months to get a bank account. Trying to be honest with the bank, right? Telling them that we were going to deal in crypto.
Oh, wow.
There was going to be transactions.
It took us about 48 hours last week to get a bank account with Wells Fargo.
And I just made, same thing. I just made one with Wells Fargo for somebody 2 weeks ago. And I just walked in and did it, no big deal. So you're right. You have to make the positive steps though. And that's awesome that, you guys are doing that. And, other people have. I know Guillaume and EOS Titan did a lot of stuff in Canada too. And you guys are quite a team up there. All you guys doing good stuff. We appreciate it.
It's too cold and too dark in winter, so we've got nothing other than work to do. And with COVID everywhere as well, then it was a forced hibernation where the other alternative is just freeze your balls off. So essentially you just work.
Yeah, good incentive. Well, thank you.
No dude about it. Canadians are the best, eh?
Nope, no dude about it. Anyways, long story short, ENF is now ENF USA Limited as well.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions about that? Oh, I see I missed a bunch of text. I don't know if there were questions in the text. Did you consider Wyoming for registration? No, I did not, Mark. When we first did the outreach, because we didn't particularly care about, for example, DAX in this case, it's somewhat irrelevant in what we're trying to do right now. Delaware is from what I understand anyways, the de facto place where a lot of corporations set up in the US. Relatively easy, advantageous, works well with a lot of other states. So we did not consider Wyoming. We did consider New York State, as well as Delaware, and we ended up choosing Delaware. Will ENF Ventures use that C Corp or have another entity? That's a good question. It will likely not use that C Corp, and we are exploring multiple entities for ENF Ventures. It is likely that ENF Ventures will be incorporated in the US as well as in Singapore. That is still very early, though. So for those who don't know what Josh was asking about, ENF Ventures is another arm that we've been working on, which would be the, I guess, kind of venture capital arm of the ENF, where we would be able to allow for external capital to come into EOS while abiding by the mission statement and the current NFP status designation of the ENF, so that any profit that is generated has to be returned back into the ecosystem. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later. I think we're going to talk about Twitter Spaces coming up, but the EVM entity that we've been setting up is going to be essentially a pilot project, a flagship for that, for the model. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of what we're doing is quite new in the way that we're setting it up. And so the first one is always tricky. And so we're using the EVM side of things to be able to showcase what ENF Ventures could be by being that flagship, and then opening it up afterwards further than just the EVM. And I'll talk about that more in the Twitter Spaces, though. I don't want to get too much into the EVM because that is coming up in the next couple of weeks, the Twitter Spaces for that, where I'll be sharing and talking specifically about the EVM.
I suppose it could be a good time to talk a bit more about these Twitter Spaces events that are coming up.
Sure.
I know you've got a few coming up soon.
Yeah, so I've got a Mars Finance Twitter Space event this Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Beijing time, and everything in between. And that will be about 150 to 200 guests expected. And then we have April 11th, so next Monday at 11 p.m. Eastern, which would be Tuesday the 12th at 11 a.m. Beijing time, a Twitter space with Chaincatcher and another 150 to 250 250 guests there as well. And so we're going to be doing a lot of these Twitter spaces coming up that we've been coordinating and I guess ramping those up as we are deploying and still on track to deploy the EVM this week. So for those who've been looking on chain, you can start seeing that movement on Jungle. And then over the next couple of weeks and months, you're going to see a lot of what we've been working on in the background in terms of the marketing for the EVM coming to light. So I invite you April 8th. So this Friday morning, Eastern at 8 a.m. and next Monday, April 11th at 11 p.m. Eastern.
And what is the topic of these spaces?
It depends. For example, the Mars Finance, they sent a bunch of questions. I'm actually going to give you an idea of what those questions are. I'm going to go open up. So we're going to be talking about, for example, how did we get here from 2018? You know, kind of what went wrong and what lessons and what did we learn from that and where can we go from there? We'll talk about the EVM and how it differs to other EVMs and why, what are the advantages and, what are we attempting to do with the EVM and such. We're going to be talking about, I'm just condensing the questions here. Give me a second.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. I'm going to be talking about the challenges of reviving EOS and competing for developers and users and traffic, and how we're going to be dealing with these changes and how we are attracting developers and builders. Talk about the ENF and how the original vision has evolved over the last 7 months or so, when we first had our 4 core pillars and we now have 7 sponsored working groups, etc., and kind of how that came about and what is the longer term vision for that. We're going to talk about the new developers and a few other things that will be released tomorrow and Friday. This is going to be a packed week in terms of announcements. Going to talk about the grant framework that is going to be released tomorrow. Is going to be made public tomorrow morning. And talk about funding initiatives and how are we funding and how do we continue to plan to expand funding in the EOS ecosystem. And finally, we're going to be talking about I guess the vision for the rest of 22, 2023 and on, and what are the goals. And then we're going to be taking some questions from the audience. So it's going to be about 30 minutes of questions that were sent in ahead of time that we'll be answering, and then about 30 minutes of ad hoc AMA style questions.
Great. So really wide range of topics there. Good to see.
Yeah. It really depends what people are sent in.
Right on. And you mentioned some news being released later this week. Anything more you can share on those topics?
Yeah. So Friday morning should be really interesting. I won't speak more about that, but tomorrow we will be releasing the grant framework, which we talked about 3 weeks ago. We said that they would be coming out this week. And so we're releasing that, and people will be able to get more information as to what that entails. So it is finally ready. I've been working on this for quite some time. When Ted joined the ENF early in February, he took that on and he pushed it over the finish line. So really excited about that because it's really another pillar on the funding side of things for the ecosystem, right? So we've got Eden, that's one. We've got Pomelo, that's another. And then this direct grant framework I've been talking about for a while. And so basically creating that framework and bringing it up to the forefront has taken quite some time because we wanted to make sure that everybody gets kind of the same information at the same time and everybody has access to that information so that when people are submitting for grants, they there's a process in place that we're not releasing something and then developing it later on. It is based off of the Web3 Foundation grant framework, very much based off of it. It is adapted obviously to our needs. There's going to be some surprises in there as well, some Easter eggs if people go and look. I invite you to go look at the evaluator section. I won't say more on that. And that should give you a hint as to what we've been working on other fronts as well. And I believe that it might already be public. I'm not sure if we've remade it public. So after I spoke about that 2 weeks ago, kind of got scared that one of you would go out and write an article about it and make it public. And so we made it private again. Yeah, okay, it is private again. So it will, I guess, become public again as of tomorrow. Didn't want anybody to jump the gun, write something about it while Brandon and Zach were working on something in the background. And you'll see that Pomelo is one of the requirements for some of the grant levels. The grant levels are going to be split in 3 different grant levels, and Pomelo is key to the process. You'll also note that it is not exclusive to public goods.
Oops, wrong one. That's
And
great.
we
Exciting
already
stuff.
have one, another piece of alpha, I guess we already have. I'm just looking in the list. Give me a second here while I read. I'm looking. Well, I can't see, but there's already a project or a team or an individual that is going through the process as a as a pilot for the process itself. So that's kind of some alpha as well.
So is the link public? Can we see it somewhere?
Cannot see it. That's what I was double checking, Hernan. We did make it back private, but it is coming out, I believe it's 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning.
Nice. I'm looking forward.
So you just have to wait another 14 hours, or no, 15 hours or so. Or 17 hours or so, I guess 16 and a half hours. If it's indeed 9 a.m. Any questions about? I can share information about it if you have specific questions.
Yeah. So do you know, first of all, about kind of the structure of how those grants will work, and also, do you know what the grant sizes approximately are, or the ranges?
Sure. So there's going to be 3 grant levels, and obviously the you'll see it's a GitHub repo. It goes into very detailed information to answer your questions way more than what I'll give you right now. But there's 3 different grant levels. Small is up to $10,000, medium is up to $50,000, or between 10 to 50, and large is over $50,000. The 3 different tiers, or the 3 different levels, have different requirements and different benefits. And so there's more than financial benefits to each level. There are also different types of grants. So there's different, we tried to categorize them in 3 different things that people can essentially apply for. So either one would be a new proposal, which would range from, and these are just examples, like core chain enhancements, FZKs, tools, applications. There's a maintenance grant, which is another type, which would be to maintain, obviously, something that's fallen out of maintenance. They're a little bit more limited in scope and milestones, but so the milestones are a little bit smaller as well. And so it's not to add something or functionality or feature to something else, but to bring something that was already there up to the current level of chain or operating or programming language, so that it's back up to par. And so that would be a maintenance grant. And then we've got an RFP response as well. So from time to time, we will be proposing RFPs to the community, or work requests to the community in the form of an RFP. And when people want to reply to the RFP, and there's going to be multiple responses that are expected, then that would be done through the grant process as well. Having said that, we're also going to be leveraging Pomelo bounties once that's out as a mechanism for that. And then the process itself, there's an application process, there's an approval process, which first starts with a committee. And then if approved by the committee, it goes to evaluators. And these are different individuals, and they're completely different functions. One is more based on kind of the business viability and community viability, et cetera. So more on that side of things. And then the evaluator is more the technical side of things. So once the general idea has been approved and the general intent, and that we see that is worthwhile funding from the network's perspective, then the evaluators step in, and then they also need to approve. And there's a certain threshold for how many community members and or how many evaluators need to approve for something to actually be approved. So once that first part is done, then the evaluators step in, and then it's really the nitty-gritty more component of the technical aspects as to whether or not that's that's possible, etc., and the skill set of the individuals or the teams applying for. And then
who'll be picking those the committee and the guys that are selecting the projects?
Sorry, who are the comedians?
No, who would be picking them? Would you be selecting them like single-handedly? Who's going to be on the committee and stuff, or?
Yes, the committee is already selected. So the committee is really a one-for-one of the ENF board. And the evaluators will be comprised of, as I mentioned earlier, some developers that the three developers that essentially joined the ENF at the beginning, as well as two other people that you'll see tomorrow morning when that comes out, and you'll see that there's an Easter egg in there, or alpha, and then you can speculate as to what that might mean in the future. But yes, those names are already chosen, and we already have as well more people on the sidelines when that grows. And what I mean by that is at some point, the process is going to ideally attract more people, more applications, and we will need to grow the amount of evaluators over time so that we don't bottleneck the process. And so we already have other people in mind for those positions. And those will be paid positions, they'll be compensated positions.
That's great to hear. And is there I don't know if this is the vehicle, but is there a specific kind of, I don't know if a business oriented branch or more like an external investor type branch on the foundation efforts to try to get like big other crypto VCs and VCs that have been looking mainly at other ecosystems to come into EOS and take a look and see what's being built? And
yeah, so that would not be the grant framework. So the grant framework is not going to be getting or obtaining any equity in return for those projects. So think of the grant framework, because again, I gave you the levels up, over $50,000, but there's a certain limit as well. Think of the grant framework more so as seed funding, but without any equity in return. And what you're asking is the other branch, which is still under works, which Joshua hinted at earlier, which is ENF Ventures, which is still not released yet.
Okay. Nice.
So yes, we are attempting the overall vision, and I've mentioned this on multiple occasions. If ideally, in an ideal world, every single person, every single stakeholder, whether they be a developer, a community member, a business, whatever that may be, in an ideal world, they would come to EOS, and within the shortest amount of time, so as efficiently as possible, they would find themselves a place within the ecosystem and be compensated to be in that particular, think of it like a box. And so that you'd have somebody that would come in, that would have a particular skill set, that would have a particular idea. And within a very, very short amount of time, we would be able to capture as close to 100% of people as possible in the shortest amount of time as possible and place them in the right box. What I mean by the right box, again, is it Eden? Is it Pomelo? Is it the grant framework? Is it ENF Ventures? Is it Helios? Wherever it may be, if success would be measured in, ideally, within 24 hours, you're outside of the ecosystem, you come in the ecosystem, and you now know exactly where to go. With very, very little friction, and you can get compensated by the system for the skill sets or the competencies that you have for providing a particular function that the system has deemed is value add. Now we're still working on that. That's obviously a huge endeavor, but the different pieces are now falling into place. Right. So more and more with this grant framework, it really unlocks a new piece of the puzzle, which is that funding roughly up to the seed level funding, non-equity, prepares and you'll see in the grant levels as well, their requirements. So essentially moving through these different departments within EOS, and the different departments being, let's say, Pomelo, Eden, the grant framework, etc. And you're moving through these different departments at your various points within your life cycle, and always getting supported in multiple ways. So not just financially, but you're getting supported by the community through resources, through project management, through marketing, through legal, whatever it may be. That the system surrounds you, and offers you the support and empowers you and amplifies whatever you are capable of doing. And at the same time, if the system is capable of doing that in a very efficient way, in a very efficient manner, the monies that we do deploy, essentially we're as much as possible trying to mitigate the potential losses. Because sometimes it's not that a team, not everything, for example, is a rug pull. It is possible that a team simply was lacking project management skills, or they were lacking legal support, or they were lacking marketing skills, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we can, on top of the finances, provide other functions that we know at this point are missing in a lot of times, then we're able to, in a way, help ensure that the funds that are deployed go longer or go further, or it is going to be a successful bet more so. So we're not going to reduce that to zero. There will be waste, but if we can reduce that gap, close that gap so that it's as close to zero as possible and as close to 100% as possible in as little time as possible, people are able to come in and be part of this ecosystem, then I would consider that a win, and that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, I'm thinking of also like developer onboarding. Like if a team comes with an idea that kind of has some proven track, or at least an MVP or something that signals traction, they could come in and say, "Oh yes, you want to deploy EOS? Here's here Ben's gonna lead you all the way. Who's your lead developer? And here's how you start putting your smart contracts and maybe get them very fast on the deploying their idea on EOS track in terms of also like technical on the development department.
Well, a big part of kind of, if you mix Pomelo and the grant framework, a big part of what we're enabling people to do is to build that MVP. And for the system to be able to see in a very transparent and accountable manner whether or not that team or that individual is capable of taking on that project. Because ideas are great, but what we've seen in EOS is the teams, or what we're lacking oftentimes is execution. So as much as I can have an idea, if I don't have the right skill sets to be able to execute on that idea, it's not worth very much. And so going back to what I said, it might be that you can get support in different ways so that you can build your MVP, so that you can get that stage, so you have that funding support at the base minimum and the extra resource support so that you can build your MVP. So perhaps it opens doors for you to maybe get then further funding without having to have diluted yourself early on in your process. Obviously, this is all in an ideal world. It probably won't work as smoothly as that. And so as people go through the processes, then we're going to reiterate. But the approach that we've taken with the ENF from the onset is not to wait until we have a perfect system in place, because we'll only see in 2 years, and by then we'll have missed the boat again. So it is to reiterate frequently in small incremental steps.
No, that's great. What I'm thinking is, if we can find a way to combine the launch of the EVM with a very fast track to onboard EVM dApps that are out there, that are even well known, and that are bringing, I think, the most critical element that our ecosystem needs right now, which is actual users. Right. So if there's a dApp working with users, and now we're going all out and saying EOS is now EVM compatible, having a fast track onto developers that already have an app running on Ethereum or Phantom or Avalanche or any other EVM compatible chain, and saying, hey, listen, porting to EOS, it's not only easy, but we have here John, smart contract developer, that will lead you all the way. If your project already has users and you're going to potentially expose your user base to EOS and to EOSIO, then we'll get you some John time to get you up and running in EOS, very fast.
Well, the good thing with the EVM being full RPC compatible is that's somewhat irrelevant if I understand what you just said.
It
but
would
yes,
be a
I
matter
do.
of they're just gonna point their RPC and it's gonna work. That's the
Pretty
idea.
much. That's the idea. That's what full RPC compatibility entails. Yes. But I do not want to talk too much about the EVM. You'll have to join the Twitter Spaces this Friday and next Monday, and perhaps a third one unannounced yet, to hear more information about that.
I will. Thanks. Hey, how can we get it scheduled like the well, I'll try to maybe who's organizing the Twitter Spaces?
Just follow our Twitter account and you'll get all the relevant information to know when and where. I already gave you the time, so maybe you want to mark your calendar, but otherwise you'll see posters coming out and the marketing for that coming out.
Great, will do.
I had one more piece of news on the agenda. Is I don't know, Chris, if you want to talk a bit about the EOS EPT that was released last week.
Yeah,
go for it.
I can. The ETP was released last week. So yeah, this was it's tricky. We can't. So from Iconic Holdings with Patrick Lowry, they've done a few other ETPs. EOS obviously isn't the first token to have an exchange traded product, which is equivalent to an exchange traded fund in North America, if that's what people are also more familiar with. And so Iconic Holdings has done a few of these. Brock helped and Helios helped to make this happen, but it can't actually be advertised as such. It's actually, there's a lot of regulations, and it's why there's been not a lot of news, and we haven't really come out saying, hey, Helios did this. We didn't really, we helped, we tried to encourage with some things we had done in the background to help facilitate this happening, but really Iconic are the entity that is meant to take the credit for that, and they of course did the work, and that's kind of how that plays out. Yeah, so it's a physically backed product. So now when institutional investors want to purchase EOS, they can do so through this vehicle, and it will be physically backed by EOS. And so it's of course great for the price in terms of removing liquidity from the system. It obviously hasn't really affected the price, but it really shouldn't, right? It's just a vehicle to allow those who are interested to acquire EOS. Now, all the other awesome alpha and things coming to EOS, like EVM, like the hard fork, and good news like that, that's what's going to drive the story. That's going to pique the interest of the institutional investors who now have a vehicle to acquire EOS tokens without having to self-custody and just to kind of bypass some of the regulatory hurdles that institutions and institutional investors would have to try to get into crypto. So that's it's really great news for us and for this space. Yeah, Helios, we did what we could. We apologize for not being super updating every week or anything like that. But like I say, there's a lot of logistics and regulations around all this thing that kind of limit what we can say and how involved we really could have or should have been in its creation in that respect. Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, now that congratulations on that. Now that it's live, do you know how Iconic plans on increasing the amount of assets under management within that ETP, sorry?
They've got a relationship with Coinbase, So I do believe that any physical EOS that become acquired through their product, it gets housed in Coinbase custody. So that's sort of the vehicle that will actually hold the EOS once it's purchased. I don't know if Iconic really advertises per se. Like, I don't know if they really do much in terms of campaigns to promote and encourage and reach out to different institutional investors, if that's what you mean, in terms of getting them.
That's more what I mean. Or is that something that Helios would pick up? And the reason why I'm asking is, I believe the Iconic ETP for Ethereum has €1 million under management, which is extremely low. And the Bitcoin that they hold is $6 million. So do you know if we could see, or is Helios planning on taking kind of charge of that so that we see way bigger numbers than what we see with the other Iconic funds? Because I would imagine what Iconic has done is the current paperwork and administrative burdens to get it in place. But if it stops there and there's no kind of work after this, then it would seem that we would expect somewhat similar levels or even lower in a way, which I'm not sure has much value. Is there something that we can do? Is there something that Helios is doing is what I'm asking, because Iconic seems like they do the paperwork, but then it's done.
Yeah, I think that's part of the handcuffing of regulators. They just really put a clamp on what these guys are allowed to do in this space. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, Helios does have intention to try to reach out. And that's a lot of what Brock brings to the table, right? Like, the connections that he has a lot of connections with institutional investors. So he will be kind of leveraging that piece to encourage some of his institutional pals to try to get in. And this is going to be the vehicle to do that. Brock's here to stay. He definitely has. I'm as convinced as ever that he is in EOS for the long haul and wants to see this token succeed, and that means price appreciation. So yeah, we do have some talks on their way of how we can try to do that. Nothing I can really disclose quite yet.
So we're almost coming up on 2 hours. That goes over most of the topics that I had on my list for the agenda today. Is anyone from the community want to bring up another topic or ask a question for someone on the call? Or maybe share a quick pitch of your Pomelo grant. We've got about 10-15 minutes left.
For Pomelo, keep in mind that the ENF will be adding, after the matching is done, an extra $125,000 in direct contributions to the grants. And I've been doing my part and reviewing what I'll likely be contributing to. The way that we're going to do it internally is that everybody's going to get an amount of money from within the ENF essentially to dedicate, and then what you will see is then just the ENF. So you won't know who's who inside, but that's how we're proceeding internally. So it's going to be 5 people who'll be doing essentially $25,000 worth of contributions to various projects.
And those funds are not going to impact the matching amount, is that right?
No, because it's such a large amount, and if we were looking at last season, the total contributions were $134,000. So we wouldn't want to. Basically, we dilute everybody by 50% if really we were able to reach the same amount of contributions as last time. So we'll be doing the direct contributions after the fact, so that it does not impact matching. So once matching is done, then we will release or announce the projects that we'll be funding and at what levels. And those will be simply direct contributions to those projects.
Yeah, baby.
If you guys don't have any more questions or comments, I'm going to play some sound effects for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll do the end of March raffle, the end of month raffle for March.
I see people asking again about B1 litigation. For obvious reasons, I mention this all the time. I know it's a shitty ass response that you don't want to hear, but for obvious reasons, I cannot comment. And when we do have any information, we do so formally in 3 languages at the same time for everyone. Phoenix says, I'd like to do a shout out to Trimbot. I agree. Trimbot has been doing great work promoting EOS on Twitter, and all that intel. So good job, Trimbot, if you're in the chat. If not, good job anyways. But if you're in the chat, you are in the chat. Good job.
Speaking of Trimbot doing a good job promoting the EOS community, he's got a grant up on Pomelo to help him do this type of work. And he's actually going to be one of the people presenting next week on the Fireside, pitching his grant. So if you want to learn more about Trimbot, make sure to join us next week, same time, same place, and to have him be part of one of the pitch sessions. Francis asks, is pitching over for Pomelo? I thought there were hundreds of apps. Submissions for grants are still open for another few days until the 11th. And then donations are going to be open until the 23rd.
I think what Francis is asking, though, is that in this particular Fireside, is pitching over for Pomelo?
Mostly, yes. We try to do 2 pitches per day or per Fireside at the beginning of the show. But during the open mic community section, like right now, if you have a grant you want to mention, feel free to jump on the mic and mention, and take a minute to mention your grant. That's fine. In terms for pitching on other platforms, Generios is hosting some pitch sessions on YouTube, and our team in Asia is hosting some on Tencent Meeting as well. So I'm gonna share that Google form here in the stream chat. So if you want to sign up to a pitch session, you can do so right there. Trimbot can't get on the mic right now, but he appreciates the support from Phoenix and others, and we're looking forward to hearing from you next week, Trimbot. We had Hernan asking where he can get his raffle ticket. So I just shared the link again for the blend on our blend page. So you can go there, blend your raffle ticket. We've got 21 prizes of 5 EOS up for grabs. I think this week we might get more than 21 tickets minted. Let me just go check real quick. So in case we do get more than 21, then it's a random draw that determines who gets the prizes. But we are also going to be handing out Party Cracker NFTs for everyone that's holding tickets. So you'll at least get a Party Cracker, and then you have a chance at getting a trophy NFT that's also backed by 5 EOS. So you can keep the trophy in your account for flexing, or you can burn that trophy and then claim that 5 EOS and maybe use it to donate to Pomelo grants.
I got a trophy. I'm still hoping that somewhere along the way, it's gonna get some FOMO and be worth much more than 5 years.
Keep hodling. Keep hodling. You never know. Yevon, EOS NFT Mastermind here says there's currently 20 tickets minted, so there's still room for one more, so that everyone's guaranteed a prize. Thanks for that update, Yevon. All right, looks like that's it for today. Thanks to everyone who joined. Thanks for the participants, to Luka and Chris and Chuck, sorry, for pitching their grant. Thanks to everyone who jumped into the audio chat or text chat to ask some questions, share their comments, etc. Always appreciated. We're gonna wrap up the call now. I will be sharing my screen. I'm going to set up this drop here with the drop tool. I'll be sharing my screen. So if someone wants to stay and just double check the randomness, you can do that. But I imagine most of you will just go on your way, which is totally fine. Yeah, Brandon, you're asking about Francis in the queue. Yeah, we can check that offline, and I'll message both of you after this chat. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up here. And again, thanks for joining, and go EOS.
Go EOS.
Thanks, everyone. Go EOS.